Yes, and in chapter 1, the question is the monotheistic religions, and it discusses whether we have the same God that non-Christians have.
Yeah, this is a key point. This gets really nuanced because I've had to really focus on this due to, in the last 4 years, we've done about 6 pretty intense debates with famous Muslims. And Islam is premised on this idea that God is only a strict unity. And a lot of people in Christianity, in the Roman Catholic world, and even the Protestant world, and even perhaps in the Orthodox world, are duped into thinking that because we believe in, as Christians, in one God, and because Muslims believe in one God, or any religion potentially believes in one God, that therefore we all believe in the same God. And that's not true. Because what you mean by one God is the whole issue, right? So it depends on what that refers to. So just because you have certain things in common or certain beliefs in common, it doesn't follow from that you have the same referent or the same belief or the same religion. Just like there's a lot of examples that we can think of this in terms of fallacies. This is called in logic the quantifier shift fallacy. The easiest way to show that is to say, well, we all have one mother, right? I have come from a mother, you come from a mother. Therefore, we all have the same mother. But that's a fallacy, right?
Yes.
It's the same way with this idea that because a bunch of people believe in one God, well, what if I believe that one God is Satan? Does that mean that we share a common religion because we all believe in just the proposition one God? No. So the content of what that one God is the whole issue. And that's what Father Rose is pointing out, is that some of the dangers of what's called natural theology or perennialism can lead people into the idea that we all deep down are really all just believing in the same God. And that's not true. You have to believe in the triune God.
Yes. Yuval Noah Harari recently made a statement about how AI was going to rewrite the Bible and give us a correct version of religion. And really, again, Fr Seraphim Rose, very prophetic in his writings, where he saw the creep into this concept. And really...
You're saying he prophesied that he was a creep? That Harari was a creep? I'm just joking. You're talking about the creep. I know. It sounded like you were saying that was funny. I was like, he did know he was a creep.
Well, he is a creep, but
right.
No, the creep of this we are all one, and it's really interesting because the book also discusses the United Nations and religious meetings. In fact, in chapter 1, it talks about the peaceful coexistence with Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. And then there's a quote from 1970 in Geneva, where a great religious manifestation titled "The Association of the United Nations" took place, and they actually engaged in a common prayer, which I found fascinating, Jay.
Yeah, there's been a bunch of these common religious prayer meetings. John Paul II famously had one of these in 1986 called the Assisi Gathering, where Roman Catholics, some Orthodox, Protestants, and Voodoo practitioners, other world religions all got together in common prayer. But who are you invoking, right? I mean, the Ten Commandments says you shall have no other gods before me. So you can't invoke all of these different gods and then say, well, sleight of hand, well, but it's all the same God because we're all together. It doesn't work that way. And that's why the ancient canons of the church say that you can't pray together with other religions and other groups. You have to protect the integrity of the faith. And there's a long history of the power elite, which he kind of touches on here and there in the book, actually funding and fostering these kinds of movements, one of which was the World Congress of Religion in the late 1890s. And there was a Swami Vivekananda who came and sort of started talking about this new mission that they would have to the West. And he actually impressed Rockefeller Sr. And they had a meeting. And Rockefeller Sr. said, I'm moved by your message. I want to promote and utilize this idea in Western Christianity. At that time, he was primarily thinking of Protestantism. This eventually led, according to their official biography by Collier and Horowitz, to the creation of World Council of Churches, National Council of Churches, which are UN-affiliated bodies. They even had people running those from British intelligence, believe it or not. And the idea was to have a new way to steer these Protestant sects and eventually the Roman Catholic Church and then some elements of Orthodoxy into what he calls the religion of the future. So this is a verifiable, easy to recognize, it's got a long history behind it, a lot of money that goes into creating these entities which are explicitly intent on steering Christianity into a world religion, a new world religion.
Yes, and he talks a lot in that in chapter 2, which is the power of the pagan gods. In fact, there's an article here from a lady who actually got involved in Hinduism and then converted to Orthodoxy later on. But in this chapter, it is actually mentioned that the point is that these practices do in fact work. These students, they do get these powers. And you can see that even in chapter 3, where they talk about the fakir's miracle, where there was a priest that was on board a ship, and he got off the ship and joined with this group, and then he did this fakir.
Yep.
Created a miracle essentially, of which was everyone that was present saw a ship coming to shore and saw themselves on that ship, and in a moment he realized, oh my goodness, I don't belong here, I shouldn't be here. And then all of a sudden the miracle stopped.
Yeah, and I remember there's a section too where they talk about there's an experience of a person going and having a manifestation of Kali, and they began to feel that it was actually demonic. And it's like, well, why am I worshiping this entity that's like, hates me and wants me dead? Like, they start to notice that there's a sense of evil, there's a sense of dread and misery in these experiences. And I think that, Hinduism does give a person access to the noetic realm, the spiritual realm. This is why people, meditate. They try to get into altered states of consciousness to access that realm. The goal is to have your third eye open. Yoga has as its desire to awaken the Kundalini serpent force at the base of the spine. This then travels up the chakras, right, to your third eye. So there is a real methodology to that, and a lot of Orthodox writers and spiritual fathers have written books. The Guru, the one about the Guru and the Elder, and the young guy who's like asking Orthodox elders about the experiences, and the statement in that book is that, there is a real experience that's encountered, but what people are experiencing is not God, it's the spiritual realm, and they're mistaking the created entities, because demons and angels and spirit, they're still creatures, right? They're mistaking that for the divine and thinking that's God, right? So it's very similar to Tibetan Book of the Dead, which Timothy Leary, one of the openly satanic counterculture guys, he wrote a whole book on appropriating the Tibetan Book of the Dead experience for the LSD experience, and he was saying that's a very similar. When you do LSD, it's very similar to what the Tibetan Book of the Dead describes, and it's a bunch of after-death experiences with demons, much like people who have really intense, hallucinogenic experience these entities. And it's the same with meditation and yogis. They disassociate and they have these similar type experiences. And so the point is that you're not, just because it's a spiritual experience doesn't therefore mean that it's good and it's enlightened, right? It can be evil. You can have a deceptive experience, and most people don't think to question, well, hey, wait a minute, just because I had an experience doesn't mean it's good. It might have been something deceptive, right? Maybe I'm being deceived by entities in a spiritual realm. And I think that those chapters are good at kind of giving examples of the fact that we have to test the spirits. You can't just believe signs and wonders, right? Because there are deceptive signs and wonders.